Most power outages don't last days. They last a few hours, just long enough to make you wonder if your food is going to spoil, whether you can still make coffee in the morning, and if you'll be able to watch your next Netflix episode. So when I got this portable power station, I decided to test it the way I actually would use it during a real power outage. I ran a refrigerator in my 100-degree Arizona garage. I powered everything from the coffee maker to the microwave and tried to see how much of a normal day I could get through on a single charge. Some things worked great. A couple things were confusing, and one setting almost convinced me the unit was broken. But before we get into that, I will say that OUPES sent me this unit for free to test. They didn't pay me for this review, they didn't tell me what to say, and they asked me to provide my honest feedback. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. Okay, let's get into it. This is the OUPES Mega 2 Pro. It's a 2048 watt-hour portable power station with a 2500 watt inverter up to a 3600 watt boost and a 3800 watt surge rating. The first thing I wanted to know was whether this thing could keep my food cold during an outage. And this wasn't some carefully controlled laboratory test. This was a real refrigerator freezer unit in a real Arizona garage in the middle of the summer where temps were hovering around 100 degrees the entire time. We also used the fridge normally. The kids were opening and closing it throughout the day, and we weren't trying anything special to conserve power. The power station itself handled the heat without any issues, staying between about 90 to 102 degrees during the test, which is right within OUPES's operating temperature range. One thing that did throw me off a little was the time remaining display. Since a refrigerator cycles on and off throughout the day, the runtime estimate was constantly changing depending on whether the compressor was running at the exact moment. So I wouldn't rely too heavily on that number for something like a fridge. With the Mega 2 Pro starting at 99% battery and running the fridge continuously, it finally shut down after 12 hours and 49 minutes. Honestly, I was pretty happy with that result. In a real outage, I could even alternate between my garage fridge and kitchen fridge to stretch the runtime even further and keep both of them cold. Once the fridge test was finished, it was time for the next question. How fast could this thing recharge? OUPES actually lists two different numbers depending on where you look. Their website claims a full recharge in only 52 minutes, while their Amazon listing says 70 minutes. So I plugged it into the wall outlet in my home office, switched it to fast charge mode, and let it rip at the full 1800 watt charge rate. The first thing I noticed was the fan noise. I measured about 56 decibels in the room while it was charging, which is roughly comparable to a modern dishwasher. It's pretty loud and it cycles lower speed and higher speed. So you definitely wouldn't like this in your bedroom charging or near where you're sleeping because it's pretty loud. Then I ran into an unexpected problem. About halfway through the charge, I tripped the breaker in my office. Apparently, running an 1800 watt charging load at the same time as my computer setup was a little too ambitious. Oops. So if you're planning to use the fast charge mode, just be aware of what else is running on that circuit. The good news is that the app lets you lower the charging rate if needed. After getting everything reset, the first charge test finished in 1 hour and 21 minutes. That's quite a bit longer than the 52-minute claim, so I decided to run the test again to make sure the breaker issue hadn't affected the results. On the second attempt, the Mega 2 Pro charged from empty to full in 1 hour and 14 minutes. That's only about 4 minutes slower than the 70-minute figure listed on Amazon, which isn't bad. After digging a little more on their website, I found the explanation. The 52-minute recharge time actually requires both AC and solar charging at the same time for up to 2800 watts of total input. Since I was charging from AC only, the 1 hour and 14-minute result made a lot more sense. Overall though, I came away pretty satisfied with charging performance. While I wasn't able to match the 52-minute claim that I originally expected, getting a 2 kilowatt hour power station back up to 100% in just over an hour is still impressively fast. For the third test, I wanted to see how much of a normal day I could get through on a single charge. So I started using the Mega 2 Pro at 100% charge to power the kinds of things that I actually use around the house. First up was a full 65-ounce pot of coffee. That dropped the battery from 100% down to 89%. Next came the toaster, then the Ninja Creamy to make Saturday morning peach smoothies for the kids. After that, I moved on to some bigger loads. I ran our clothes washer. My wife used the hair dryer for about 25 minutes. I vacuumed with the shop vac, charged my laptop and phone, and even powered my office, microwave, and beverage fridge. To finish things off, I hooked up the TV, soundbar, and the Nintendo 64 for retro science. The only thing I couldn't run was the clothes dryer, since it requires 240 volts and the Mega 2 Pro only provides 120 volt outlets. After all that, I still had 44% battery remaining. Honestly, that surprised me more than anything else in this test. So I decided to keep going. I started brewing pot after pot of coffee just to see how much energy was left in the tank. The battery finally hit 0% during the 5th pot of coffee. At that point, I had enough caffeine in the house to survive the entire power outage myself.
Does anybody want coffee?
So overall, this test was pretty straightforward. Everything I plugged into the Mega 2 Pro worked exactly the way it was supposed to. Other than the clothes dryer, it handled every appliance and device I threw at it without any issues. Now let's talk about the part of the experience that almost convinced me this thing was broken. Most of the issues I ran into weren't actually hardware problems. They were setup and app related. The first one happened when I tried connecting the Mega 2 Pro to the OUPES app. The app couldn't find the power station until I discovered that you have to press this IoT button on the unit to enable Bluetooth and Wi-Fi. Once I figured that out, it was pretty easy enough, but I do think that using a Bluetooth or a Wi-Fi symbol instead of IoT would have made that a little more intuitive. The second issue was more confusing. At one point, the power station stopped charging at 91%, even though everything appeared to be working normally. After a fair amount of troubleshooting, I discovered there was actually a battery protection setting buried in the app that limits the maximum charge percentage. Mine was set to 90% by default. Once I changed that setting to 100%, everything started charging normally again. To be fair, I actually like having that option because it can help extend battery life over the long term. I just wish it had been a little more obvious during the initial setup process. Other than those two things, the app was straightforward to use and gives you control over charging speeds, firmware updates, battery settings, and a variety of other customization options. There were also a couple of additional features worth mentioning. The first is the Anderson port. If you're running devices like Starlink or a DC refrigerator, you can power them directly from the battery without going through the AC inverter, which means less wasted energy and potentially longer run times. Just keep in mind that this port can be configured for either charging input or power output, so you'll want to make sure it's set correctly. The other feature is expandability. If your power needs are larger than mine, the Mega 2 Pro can be expanded with up to 4 additional batteries for more than 10 kilowatt hours of total capacity. So while the base unit is plenty for my needs, it gives you room to grow if your backup power requirements become more serious. So after spending the week testing it, what's my overall takeaway? For me, the answer is pretty simple. The Mega 2 Pro did exactly what I wanted it to do. Going into this review, I wanted to know whether it could get my family through a typical power outage without losing our food and still having access to the appliances we use every day. Based on my testing, the answer is yes. It kept a refrigerator running for nearly 13 hours in a 100-degree Arizona garage, powered virtually every appliance I threw at it, and recharged from empty to full in just over an hour. While I did run into a couple of setup frustrations at the beginning, none of them turned out to be actual problems with the power station itself. And even though features like the Anderson port and battery expansion aren't especially important for my current situation, I can absolutely see the value if your power needs are larger than mine. For my needs today, it's more than enough. But if those needs change in the future, I can expand the system without having to buy a new unit. So if you're looking for a portable power station for home backup, camping, RV use, or simply some extra peace of mind when the power goes out, I think the Mega 2 Pro is a solid option. One last thing before I wrap this up. At the time I'm filming this, OUPES has the Mega 2 Pro on sale. And if you use our coupon code PPS at checkout, you can stack an additional 5% on top of the sale price. That brings the cost down to as low as $664, which is honestly a pretty compelling price for a 2048 watt-hour power station. Of course, sale prices change all the time, so definitely check the current pricing before you buy. And if you do decide to pick one up, using the coupon code PPS helps support the channel and allows us to keep creating more real-world portable power station reviews like this one. Thanks for watching.